From the center of the universe, now in its 7th season covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant joined as always by JB, and we are here to get you set for CNE week with your Toronto Argonauts taking on the BC Lions in a must-win game, another must-win game, and that's how it's going to be for the rest of the season. Here's what's on the docket for this week. First of all, there was a scary incident at practice yesterday. I'll tell you a little bit about that and why there seems to not be cause for alarm at this moment. Why the team is struggling to win, and down the stretch in those last minutes of games, the Argos now, I believe, 0-6 in games decided in the final minutes. We'll look at Brandon Kemp's performance at left tackle last week. Has he helped the O-line going forward? And is there still a path to the playoffs for the Toronto Argonauts? We'll go through the remaining schedule and see if we can find those, what I believe are 6 needed wins if the Argos are going to stay alive in this thing in 2025. Plus, we've got all our usual stuff, a great pick 6 this week, our game preview, injury report, OCDC, one thing, put me down for 20, and challenge flag. All that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. JB, before we get into anything, I want to talk about Something in the Water Brewing because they have 2 great new beers they released this week. 2 really exciting flavors. You've got one that's a West Coast IPA called Graffiti on a Train, and then a pineapple cinnamon sour that I think is definitely up your alley, JB. That sounds like something you might enjoy on a patio on a sunny afternoon.
Well, I'm very open about enjoying my sours in the summer. Yeah, look, I'm up for it.
I'm trying out that Graffiti on a Train for sure. West Coast IPA, I'll try out as well. And don't forget, you got Longboat Pale Ale down there. But if you wanted to try something other than Longboat, Graffiti on a Train, the pineapple cinnamon sour, give those a shot. They just arrived this past week, so you want to try both out. And of course, no better occasion to do it than if you're at a practice at Lamport Stadium, go into the game on Saturday, drop by Something in the Water first. Check out Longboat, check out Graffiti on a Train. Try that sour if that's your thing on a sunny afternoon on the patio. Okay, JB, let's get into things. First up, let's talk about that scary scene from yesterday's practice. So an ambulance was called into the field. George Moore, I guess, had hit his head. And I wasn't at practice yesterday. David Morisuti wrote about it for Sportsnet. And so what David had reported is that Moore had a sharp pain in his neck and down his leg, did have movement, and then afterwards Dinwiddie described this as more precautionary than anything else and said the team felt that Moore was going to be okay. So that's a big sigh of relief. You never want to see, anytime you see an ambulance on a football field, whether it be practice or games, it's a pretty terrifying thing. So glad to hear that George Moore is responding well and hopefully will be okay going forward.
It's just a reminder. Just a reminder of it's a very dangerous sport. It's really crucial that the safety protocols and everything are in place, and so it's excellent that they were able to take care of that.
And I love how precautionary it is. And this is all levels too, from like the levels that we've coached to the pro level. Like when you hear teams say, like Coach Dinwiddie said, it's just a precaution. That's great. Like I love that they are, instead of like the old days where you just try and walk something off and, I'm sure it'll be fine. Like, yeah, let's make sure. Check guys out, especially when you're dealing with heads and necks and stuff like that. Like you got to be extra careful, and they are. And I love to see that. And again, it spans all levels of football. So that's been a fantastic development over the last 15, 20 years. JB, why can't Toronto win football games? This team, basically record-wise, looks like the terrible 2019 team and where they were at this stage in the year, where their only wins were coming against the Ottawa Redblacks, who were worse. And yet, this team is not like that. This is a much better football team than that 2019 team. But they're losing games in a different way. Instead of getting their doors blown off, they're losing in the most painful fashion. They're losing in the last minute. They have a chance for a drive for the win. They have a chance for a stop for the win. And no matter what situation is, they just can't seem to get it done, whether it's a kick return touchdown against Saskatchewan, whether it's a bomb in the last minute, a pick against Montreal. They find a way to lose every single football game. Where do you turn? Where does the responsibility fall for this? What's going wrong for the Argonauts this season?
Well, it's difficult to know without being in the building. Like I would say, from having observed, my New England Patriots over the last 4 years, as well as teams I've coached, a mental toughness is what teams that win have. They're able to impose their will in the final 5 minutes, and there's no fear of screwing it up, where teams that have given up late losses, it's really present in their mind that is this going to be the moment where we screw it up? Is this going to be the mistake we make? You're almost trying to tiptoe your way to the end. There's no confidence that here we are, it's the fourth quarter, now we're going to close because that's what we do. So there is a mental aspect to it where losing begets more losing. You don't feel confident. You don't feel like you're going to just finish it. You feel like you're one mistake away from blowing it. And that's a really hard thing to change because, how do you stop it? If you could stop it, you would. There is an aspect of the mental aspect to it. I think teams get nervous at the end after they blow a couple of games. And then there's the talent issue. This team is not as talented as last year. I would argue maybe even significantly less talented than last year. And less talented players make mistakes. That's why some people make a certain amount of money and other people make less money. Not everybody is equal, and you're going to have, when you have more people like that, you're more likely to get a mistake from them. So I think it's a combination of both. I don't think that there's one thing you can point to, but to me, it's a mixture of talent and mindset.
And I agree with you. And I think that if you kind of break it down even further than that, you say, okay, well, let's look at the coaching, play calling. I don't feel like that has really been an issue. Like, I don't mind being more aggressive, I suppose, defensively in the closing stages of games instead of being cautious. But I don't feel like I haven't felt like they're just sitting back and in a prevent. I haven't felt like offensively they're just running the ball up the middle. Like, I do feel like the play calling in the last few minutes has been okay. It just hasn't really been executed. And if you want to look at the reason why, well, like you said, there has been some talent depletion, and there's also been the injuries that we talked about all season. They've spread themselves through most positional groups to a point where I think in each positional group, you need to have one guy that is going to make a play that everyone can kind of turn to and be like, you know what? At least we got this guy and he's going to make a play. And I think on the Grey Cup winning teams, you had so many of those guys. Every positional group had a guy. There was a guy that you knew was going to get a sack in those dying seconds. A guy that you knew at linebacker was going to come up with a huge crushing hit, and a guy that was going to get that pick, that crucial interception in the late stages of the games. And on the other side of the ball, the guy that was going to blast through the line and carry bodies with him for a touchdown, the guy that was going to make that amazing throw, the guy that was going to pick up that all-out blitz and give the quarterback time and do whatever he could to make sure that happened. And I don't know that this team has, I think, other than receiver, I think we've seen, DeMonte Coxie will go out and make those huge plays and get those big catches. I think they have him. They have that guy they can turn to in the receiving core. But yeah, you look around, like, Arbuckle's play has been good, but I don't know if you think of Arbuckle compared to Chad Kelly as the guy that in that dying stages of the game is going to make that huge play that has teams shaking and thinking, they got this guy back there. O-line, oh, sorry, go on. Yeah, you jump in.
No, go.
Well, the O-line, missing Ryan Hunter and Ian Dankwa, that has hurt. But they've had, I think they really miss Dejan Allen. I think I don't know that there's a confidence within that group, especially from the tackle position. We'll talk more about that later. Running back like Mayan Williams was supposed to be the guy, and it's been such a rotation. The D line, I think they really were looking to count on Christmas and Cox, and obviously missing the guys they lost to Edmonton and Hawley and Arimolade. And then the linebackers, who are great personnel-wise, have been so banged up. Like Winton, you can't look like Winton is one of those guys. Judge is one of those guys, but you can't look at those two guys every single game and be like, all right, Winton, it's time to. You can't do that from the middle linebacker position. Like it's time for you to make the game-changing play. You just can't be there. You need more than just your linebackers capable of doing that. And then, yeah, the DBs just haven't been getting the bounces and getting their hands on the ball like last year. Special teams went from being a real strength to because that was a way to win games and close out games last year, and this year it has been a way to lose games. So I think all those things together, it's been tough down the stretch.
Every position other than wide receiver is downgraded from last year. And that's a lot of positions to downgrade. And winning is hard in professional football. The margin between winning and losing is very thin. They're still competitive. They're not the 2019 team, completely lacking in talent. That's not, it's a good comparison. They aren't that team. They are still very competitive. But when you're, exactly as you say, when you're missing that one star at every position group, it's hard. Running back has been just a washout. And Janarian Grant is not the Janarian Grant that he was last year. And Kassar being injured was huge for the special teams coverage. So when you're looking at those challenges, that's the difference. Like the margin is so thin, and when you take away those players, you're going to need to restock the shelves. I mean, I think that's the reality moving into next year. Is you're going to have to, this is in many ways kind of a rebuild year, and you're going to have to try and bring in a few more players to kind of bring the other sections up to what the wide receivers are.
And I think that's where the Chad Kelly injury kind of factors in, because it's a bit of an X factor. Because you look at Arbuckle and the offense, you say, well, the offense, they're scoring points, they're playing great. Arbuckle's playing really good football. It's not the same, though, because Chad is one of those guys that can change a game in a heartbeat. And he's done it in those pressure situations, like, beating Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Like, he's got those wins on his resume where he's battled and found a way. And he, as I've documented in other podcasts, single-handedly helps the run game. He single-handedly slows down the pass rush. He also stretches the field, which helps your running game too, and also helps that underneath game. Like his presence there in the dying seconds of the game, like when there's a minute left and the other team is sending so much pressure. It's felt this year like those situations, the Argonauts have been two and out. They haven't been able to extend drives and then take knees for the win. It just hasn't been like that. And I think Chad out there does change that dynamic. So that's really where his presence is felt. It's not so much in those, it's not to the same degree in the other 58 minutes or so, but in the final two you feel it. But he obviously would help out in a lot of other elements of this game. We answered this, JB, like we went through this earlier in the year, but from the defense, if there was one guy that you had to pick, I think we both kind of were throwing around the idea of flow last time. We talked about Deshaun Amos as being like the guy that is one guy that's most missed that you could really plug into this unit and maybe could be the guy you would turn to in those crunch moments. Are you still looking at Amos and Flo as those guys?
For me, it'd be Amos and Hawley.
Yeah.
I think those are the two biggest losses. I think if they have those two guys, it's a different dynamic on the team in terms of building strong up the middle. And for me, those are big those are big losses. I mean, the defensive line was decimated in the offseason. So we thought that maybe with Chad playing, teams could, the Argos could win 40-35 all season. And I think the offense shows that's probably the case. They would with Chad, but it's not. Yeah, it's not a question of not wanting to win. I think that they're being coached well, and I think they're trying. It's just they're missing a couple of stars, and you have to have it. You can't just draw plays and then run guys out there and do it. That's not how football works. You have to have stars. That's the difference. If you have stars, you're going to win more games than teams that don't, and they're just lacking stars at the moment.
Let's get into pick six, which I think is a good time to do that. Daniel Montanera, is our pick six winner this week. Pick six is a way to win free beer every week. This is brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. And all you got to do is look for the prompt on social media like Daniel did. Send me a question either on Twitter at Ben_Grant or on Blue Sky at Coach Ben Grant. And when you see that prompt, send a question. If we answer it like we're going to do with Daniel's question here, you win a 6-pack of beer courtesy of Something in the Water Brewing that you can pick up the next time you're in Liberty Village. The next time you're going to an Argos game, the next time you're going to an Argos practice, pick up your 6-pack of beer from Something in the Water. So let's get to Daniel's question. He wonders about the secondary. He says, is the secondary undersized? It seems to me they had trouble shedding their blocks against Edmonton, and that's why Rankin had a field day running up the sidelines. JB, I'll turn it over to you first, and then I'll follow that up. How do you see the secondary? Are they simply too small?
I don't think so. Like if you look around the league, like take Calgary, which is probably the best defense in the league, or certainly one or two. Like size and height wise, they basically match up with Calgary's defensive backs. However, Edward and Franklin are lighter at 185 than most guys. Most DBs run about 200, 210. So they do have a couple of smaller DBs. So I think the question or the point is legitimate. Are guys getting washed out in the run? So yeah, I think you might want to look to add a little more size in terms of run support. However, the rest of the defensive backfield is league average in terms of height and size. I think it's more a question of it's everything is so interconnected, because the linebackers and the defensive line can't just get washed out and now the defensive back is supposed to clean it up. It's all connected where maybe the defensive back is getting washed out, but there's also things happening before that. I mean, the run to the edge is definitely a problem. They don't have a run stopping defensive back where, say, Peters was so great at flashing out of that backfield. So it's also a mindset. Does a defensive back see themselves as a run stopper? Especially if you're going to play like, cover 3 where the corners are up. I don't think they have that mindset. The defensive backfield we've talked about. I don't feel like the defensive backfield has a violent mindset. I think you can contrast it with Hamilton and the violence that their defensive backs bring. I don't feel like that's really what this group is, or haven't shown to be. So yeah, I think it's a legitimate area for reevaluation in the offseason in terms of trying to find somebody who, like they've had in the past, who would really punish that underneath screen game or that swing pass game. They are not as good at doing that as they have been in the past.
Yeah, I think ideally I think it's also situational. Like ideally your corners and your secondary in the CFL, you're not typically looking at those guys to be your run stoppers. Like that's not how I would populate a roster. by saying, okay, I got to have really good run stoppers in the secondary. Usually in the CFL, run game is not what's going to win it or lose it for you, and you'd much rather have guys that can cover downfield. But I think we saw the Edmonton scheme to pick on certainly Edouard. When it wasn't Rankin, it was receiver screens, and then a sort of bubble out to Rankin's side, which was basically a receiver screen. Those are tough. Like McFadden's great at blowing those up, and him being back at halfback, I do actually like McFadden at halfback, but it did leave them a bit vulnerable. Both, like you said, Franklin and Edouard are both a little undersized at corner. Now, Franklin takes some of that away by pressing as much as he does. You see him up on the line of scrimmage a lot, and that makes it tougher to go out that way. It makes it tougher to get a block on him. But on the other side, yeah, Edouard's got to do a little bit better job. He's got great speed. We know he can be great in coverage, and he's not afraid to hit either. It's just once you're engaged, he seems to have a tougher time shedding than some of the other guys do. And so I think there's a good point that Daniel's got in his pick six question. But I don't think from a team building standpoint that generally comes into play. And certainly that's not the reason they lost last week's game. It's not the reason that they're struggling this season. But yeah, it shows up from time to time. I just think the Argos have to find a way to make sure that is not the cause of one player having a huge game.
Well, I don't think they've replaced Peters. That will be one aspect, I think. I don't think not easy to do, but I don't think they've replaced what Peters brought to the backfield. And that shows up in games.
Peters has weaknesses too, though. Peters was great at, he was great at blowing stuff up in the flats, no question. Right. And he did have a presence there in the run, but he could also get beat over top and down the sideline, and that's something that
I think you have to have both, and I don't think they don't have the blow up underneath player,
right?
Currently.
Yeah, no, I see that. And I think McFadden's probably the closest guy to that, and people usually will stay away from him on the receiver screens because he does blow those up. But yeah, at halfback, it does leave the corners a little small. But thank you for your question, Daniel, and thanks to Something in the Water for providing him with a six-pack. We'll pass your name along to Something in the Water so that you can go up and collect your six-pack of beer. Let's get into Brandon Kemp, who started at left tackle last week, and I thought looked good. Now, not great, not all-star level good. There were still a few missed blocks. There was a penalty call where he got beat, but I thought it all in all was probably the best game at tackle that I could remember watching all week. It didn't actually grade out that way. It ended up tying for the best game that we'd had so far from a tackle. But the way that, in terms of my grading, I haven't actually looked at the PFF grading for this week for Kemp. But I thought, for the eye test, I thought he held down that left tackle spot very nicely. Did it help the O-line play as a whole? I'm not sure. It didn't revolutionize. It wasn't like something totally different. I think the Argos are getting better at dealing with the pass rush. I think Arbuckle is getting better at dealing with the pass rush. I think Coach Dinwiddie is calling plays to help himself out as much as he can with regards to that. But I think it was tough with McMahon getting taken out of the game fairly early and Spencer Brown having to go in there. It was very tough to evaluate that unit as a whole because clearly that level of communication wasn't there. It wasn't the same. And so, I'd like to see another full game with Brandon Kemp before we can say that, yes, he is clearly a guy going forward. Because like I said, the tackles aren't solely the reason that the tackle play has been poor. And I don't want to go through this whole thing again because I've talked about this a lot this season, but it has to do with the quarterback style. It has to do with the rest of the offensive line. It has to do with the inability to run the football. That is, all of that stuff contributes to why the tackles have played poorly in pass protection. But I did think we saw some real positives from Kemp. And if you can string another game or two together at that left tackle position and look equally as good, I think there's reason for optimism with the Argos and their pass protection unit. JB, the path to the playoffs seems very grim right now at 2 wins, sitting at the very bottom of the standings. But I wanted to just map this out with you and sort of say, can we find, 6 wins in here. Unquestionably, the Argos will have to go on a streak. There's no doubt of just the nature of having to go 6-2 through the remaining 8 games. Like that, you have to have a streak. There's no mathematical way not to have a streak when you need 6 out of 8. But can we find those wins? And let's go through it. So it starts with an absolute must-win this week. The CNE game, you've got to beat the BC Lions. There's no question about that. One, I think BC has vulnerability. I know they're playing well right now, but this is a team that can be beat by just about anybody. They can also beat just about anybody. They can look fantastic. They can look terrible. Toronto needs to make sure they look terrible this week. That has to be a win. In 2 weeks' time, you got a game or 2 games time. They're hosting Edmonton, and I think that also has to be a win. I know they just lost in Edmonton. They've got to return the favor. You have to beat the Elks at home. That's your 2 that you absolutely have to win. And then the third that I'd add to that is going to BC Place, which is going to be the most difficult of these 3 that I'm highlighting. You have to beat the Lions. You got to sweep them. Because you've put yourself in that position. So those are 3 you have to. There are no choices. After that, you've got a Labor Day game at Hamilton, and then you're hosting Hamilton October 4th. I think you have to split those. I'm not saying you've got to win both. That would be ideal. It'd be amazing. I think that's maybe unrealistic to expect that from this Argos team. So I think you need to split that series. If you don't win Labor Day, you got to win when you're at home against the Tiger Cats. You got to win that October 4th game. But you can't afford to lose one of those. And then your other remaining loss is either hosting Montreal September 19th, and they may still not be like fully healthy by then. So I think there's a chance there. And then I want to look at week 19 and 20, the last 2 weeks of the season for the Argos. Week 19, they're at Saskatchewan. The Riders, if they continue running away with things, that could be a game where they may get some players a rest, because typically with division leading teams, you don't necessarily want to rest week 20, the last week of the season. The reason you don't want to rest that last week is because you've got a bye week. You don't necessarily want 2 weeks in a row without your starters playing meaningful reps. So it could be that that's a less than fully staffed Riders team in week 19. And then in week 20, Calgary Stampeders, if they are secure in their playoff position, maybe that's the week that they will choose to rest their guys. So the Argos could get a bit of help. They could have a less than fully staffed Riders and Stampeders team to end the season there. So if you look at those 2 as wins, you've got one of those Ticats games and then the 2 BC games and the Edmonton game. It's possible to get your 6 wins there and still lose 1 to Hamilton, still lose 1 to Montreal. JB, I know it seems very dire at this stage. Can the Argos go on a run? Is there a path to a playoff position? Or does it really all come down to this BC Lions game this week?
I've been a little fatalistic about this. It is the CFL. God love it. So the playoffs are still very available. Can they go on a run? It's hard to say that based on everything we've seen to this point.
Well, because they can't win a game right now. Like that's the thing. Like it's hard to envision. Like you look at this roster and say, well, yeah, they should be able to win a few games in a row, but they haven't done it at all.
Well, right. Like what would I guess I would ask, like, what would change? Like what significant roster changes are going to occur that might suggest a change in the team? I mean, obviously, if Chad came back, maybe that's a conversation piece. Well, you just have to take it one step at a time, like you got to dig up. So if they're going to dig up, they need to start digging up this weekend. BC is a good team. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. And if they can't beat BC, well, we had this conversation about Ottawa, but literally, if you can't beat BC at home, then not only are you not going to make a run, but really what would be the point of making the run anyways, because you're not a playoff caliber team. But if they can beat, if they can beat BC at home and kind of change the vibes and change the sense of impending doom that maybe some guys feel, that we're waiting for the last second interception or the last second fumble or the dropped pass or the missed deep ball, that's going to screw us. Yeah, I think you can be optimistic if they can beat BC. They're a playoff caliber team. BC is a playoff caliber team. I would say a tier two playoff team, but a playoff team. So if Toronto was able to beat BC, then they're worthy of the playoffs, and I think they can start to build, because the league is very topsy turvy. Montreal is down to about seven guys. Um, you know, Hamilton just got the doors blown off it. There are no powerhouse teams. I think Saskatchewan and Calgary are very good. But the rest of the league, I don't think you have to worry about the league running away from you. So yeah, if they can beat BC at home, I definitely think they can make a push for the playoffs.
And I think it would be, and we're kind of switching to the game preview here. We'll kind of meld these both together. But I think it would actually be better for the Argos to win a nail biter in the last minute this weekend than it would be for them to beat BC by 2 touchdowns. As much as you would say, look, we just ran it up against the Lions.
I don't think they're going to beat BC by 2 touchdowns.
No, but that's how they've gotten their wins this year. The 2 wins they've had this year were in the bag late. They weren't wins where they had to really fight through the pressure at the end. That's where all their losses have come from. Like every single loss, except one, basically is the nail biter. I think they need to win a nail biter, because I think that's what you need to kind of start changing the attitude and the mentality and that feeling that creeps up on you that you described earlier of like, oh my God, we're gonna lose this game, aren't we? I can feel it slipping away. They got to find a way to overcome that. And so if they can do that this week, whether it's a last second touchdown catch or I think what would be even bigger is a defensive stop, 3rd down and goal from the 8, and Rourke gets sacked to end the game, like that is a win that the defense can come away feeling some confidence with. So it's a huge game. And continuing with the game preview, CNE game already, I think we've got... I don't know if I've got confirmation on that, but I believe already it is going to be, even if there are no walk-up sales at all, I think it is going to be the most well-attended game of the season. It is, if you're only going to one Argos game this year, that's the game you got to go to. You get free admission to the CNE. You got Blue Rodeo also performing that night. You can make a full day of it on Saturday. So if you are not one of the over 20,000 that are already planning on being down there, make sure that you grab your ticket and get your free CNE pass. Enjoy some of the rides, enjoy the midway, maybe taking Blue Rodeo after the game, celebrating a Toronto Argonauts win. You got to get down there, because it is, once again, the most important game of the season for the Toronto Argonauts. And yeah, it's such a great vibe. I love even the last couple weeks, seeing them setting up the Ferris wheel and the gondola and everything else. But once you get the lights and the sounds and the food building, JB, we'll have to try some fun concoctions again. So that's all stuff to look forward to for Saturday, plus a great football game. Let's get into the injury report. BC, not looking too different from how they lined up last week. The way I look at this is Corey Woodruff at left guard is probably the only guy that I was wondering about, but he was able to practice full yesterday. He was banged up with an ankle injury. I think he's going to be able to go. And I'm not sure if any of the other guys are going to be able to come back. Michael Couture limited with that hand injury. Some of the other guys that have been banged up, I'm not sure real difference makers on the BC Lions team anyway. So I think you're largely going to get that same squad that we saw last weekend. For the Argos, it's a much different story, and there are some very concerning injuries. The most is DeMonte Coxey. He had that horrible hit, the head injury, hasn't practiced this week. Yesterday, Coach Dinwiddie seemed to suggest it would be doubtful that he would be able to play this week. That is a big loss for a receiving core that hasn't really lost many bodies to injury this season. And so that is going to be turning to Tavares Daniels to step up. It's going to be turning to Jake Herslow to continue the path that he's been on. I think Kevin Mittal has to get back involved. You remember how he was leading the Argos in targets and receptions like in seemingly every game early in the season and hasn't been able to maintain that pace. They got to find a way to get him back involved with that Coxie injury. Adam Guillemette is a concern for me. Hasn't practiced the last 2 days with a head injury. I'm always very nervous about losing a long snapper. I think it is a hugely important position, and just substituting another guy in always makes me concerned. Ryan Hunter is not coming back this week or anything like that, but the fact that he's out there practicing limited with that shoulder injury he suffered from that being hit by a car, good to see that he's at least out there practicing in a limited fashion along with Chad Kelly. Wyndham McManus was able to go full yesterday. He's had a tricep injury to stack on top of every other body part that's injured, but seeing him go practice full yesterday probably means he's going to play this week. Coach Dinwiddie said after the practice that he was going to try and stretch it out because he's really banged up, but he wants to make it to the bye. And they got this CNE game, you got your Labor Day game, and then the bye. And Winton he so badly needs that rest because he is banged up. But expect him to go, if at all possible, until that bye week. And then on top of that, Jordan Williams was back practicing full. He was limited with a shoulder injury the day before. And some unfortunate news, I thought, seeing Mayan Williams go limited in practice on Tuesday and then not practice Wednesday. Now, maybe that was just precautionary. Let's hold him out, see how he tests. And I really don't know. But in my experience, when you're trying to come back from a head injury and you practice and then don't respond well, that's often why you don't practice the next day, is that you were trying to get some motion going again. You're trying to run around and some of the symptoms that you thought you'd maybe gotten past returned. And so hopefully that's not what happened with Mayan Williams, but when I see that limited and then did not practice back to back, that's usually what my mind jumps to. But this is a banged up squad. If anyone's as banged up as Montreal right now, it's Toronto, and it's been like that all season for the Toronto Argonauts. JB, let's do OCDC. We'll start off with you, JB. Let's look at the defensive plan for the BC Lions first. So you're BC. You're coming into this CNE game to play the Toronto Argonauts, who have been putting up points. What do you do to shut down Nick Arbuckle? Does it change this week, or are you going back to the plan that seems to work and yet not every team seems to implement?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how much success Toronto has had offensively. Teams don't seem to have a feel on how to control it. So, I mean, Toronto's third in points for. They are a very good passing team. So you would think that much more attention would be paid to that, but I don't know. It really feels like teams are just kind of going out there and playing cat defense against them. It doesn't feel like there's a really specific defensive game plan being installed against Toronto.
For our new listeners, can you explain cat defense?
Oh, cat defense is just my cats are better than your cats. So, they're just out there and like we feel like our guys can stick with your guys and we can win the one-on-one battles, and we don't need to really disguise a ton, or we don't need to try and trick you, or we don't need to roll coverage, or lots of different tricks you can do. Like a lot of times it seems very straightforward what they're able to do. So it does feel like teams are spending more time installing offensive game plans against Toronto. Yeah, like from BC's perspective, for sure. I think you're looking to rush the quarterback, really kind of test that offensive line, especially with like overload blitzes in obvious passing downs. That's been a problem if you're sending 7 guys. It's been a problem picking it up in obvious long passing downs. So that for sure is part of the game plan. McCall is a big deal for Toronto. I think he really helps. I think if I'm BC, um, I'm definitely trying to keep an eye. But from a defensive point of view, Toronto is a big play team. They have done very well with plays over 30 yards in the air. Um, that it's one of the areas that they've been near the top in the league. So I have to take that away. I have to force Toronto to try and paper cut their way down the field. Like I can't let them have the 40-yard pass. So I've said this before, but if I'm playing Toronto, I'm not worried about the run at all. I'm not dedicating any resources to it. I'm going to definitely have uh, 7 defensive backs. I'm going to take away the deep pass, and I'm going to play a lot of man under. I think that's the way you play Toronto. I don't know if teams feel like they don't need to do that, but for me, if I take away the deep and I'm playing man underneath, that feels like the way to take on Toronto. And whatever run they do, I'm just going to trust that. I'm going to trust that a 5-man front can take care of it. Not just down linemen, but like linebackers and linemen. Like if I got 5, 6 guys in the box, I feel like that can take care of Toronto's run, and that's a great advantage if I can have 7 guys playing pass.
Switching to the offensive side, I think what I want to do if I'm the BC Lions is I think I want to be very unpredictable. Toronto is struggling defensively. I think teams that struggle defensively often will try to gamble a little bit or say, hey, let's just take this one thing away, or let's lean into tendencies. Let's see if we can give ourselves the advantage by knowing that in this situation, they're probably going to do this. And I think when you're BC, you can do a little bit of everything. You've got a great running game. You can throw the ball all over the field. You can make every kind of throw. You don't even need to lean on one particular receiver. Like you can spread that ball around too. It makes it very tough to game plan. And I think you have to maximize that if you're the Lions. So that means you can run in passing situations. You pass in running situations. You don't necessarily know that you have to go to this guy or have to go to that guy. I think you can comfortably spread that ball around and really force Toronto to cover all areas of the field. You call your 2nd and 8 running plays, you call your 2nd and 2 passing plays, and just have Toronto's head spinning. Don't let them confidently rush after the passer. Don't let them confidently dial up a run blitz, knowing that it might burn them on the other end. I think it's a simple plan, I think, but I think you just have to be unpredictable. Don't do what Toronto's expecting you to do, because you're just as good at doing that thing as you were at the thing that they expect you to do. Let's switch over to the good guys. JB, what is your Toronto Argonauts plan for defense? How do you stop this BC Lions offense that can do just about anything?
Yeah, it's a problem. In other weeks, we've talked about, like Ottawa did not have a very good offense. Edmonton did not have a very good offense. That is not the case. This BC offense is elite. They're very good at running. They're very good at passing. Rourke seems to be warming up. It's a huge problem, I think, for Toronto. I think BC has the firepower to match anything Toronto can throw at them. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to. It's very, it's really hard to play a team that can run and pass. Like essentially, BC is number 1 across the board in almost every offensive category. They are first or second, in average rushing yards, in number of passing yards, in red zone touchdowns, in passing touchdowns, in net offense, in field goal. This is an offensive juggernaut. And Toronto is like whatever the reverse of a juggernaut is. I guess I should have looked that up before we started, but the anti-juggernaut. How are they going to stop them? I guess all you can do, from a defensive point of view, is really try and shut down one of the two things. I think you're going to try and focus on the run. to try and prevent the two front war. If you can't stop one, you're really dead, and then you're just playing roulette. Is it run? Is it pass? I think you have to dedicate your resources to try and keep the run in check. Butler is a really good running back. He's having a good season. The middle of Toronto's run, the edges have not been great. If you can keep the run in check, and then all you have to do is deal with Rourke passing touchdowns. But I don't know what else you can do. I think you just have to play like deep cover 3 and try and prevent touchdown passes to Keon Hatcher and keep Butler in check. I think that's my plan. I think if I can keep BC under 100 yards rushing, and I'm going to need a big performance from the defensive backs. You're just going to need somebody to step up and have a really good game, because the defense is not strong enough, I think, fundamentally to handle BC's offense. So I think you have to cheat. I think you have to, like a baseball player that's guessing fastball. I think you have to cheat and stop the run and hope that the passing game doesn't destroy you. I wish I had a better plan, but I don't know. I don't think you want to let Butler just go down the field. Like, that's what teams have done. If you look, like, Toronto's passing defense is pretty good statistically, but then you look at the numbers, and teams are not passing very often. They're ninth in the number of passing attempts, because teams are finding that they can push down the field in big chunks with running. So they don't have to pass as much against Toronto. And I think you have to force BC to try and pass it more. Rourke does turn it over. He's not perfect. I think you can get turnovers. The one thing BC is not great at offensively is turning the ball over. They do fumble a lot. So I think you have to go in there looking to strip. You have to play more aggressively. Maybe you get burned, but you have to try and get turnovers. You have to be punching and ripping at the ball, even if it means maybe your tackle's not perfect. I think the defense has to play riskier defense against BC to try and get turnovers, where it might not be fundamentally sound, but you just have to try and get turnovers. You have to jump passes, and maybe it ends up burning you, but that's what you have to do when you play somebody that is better than you. You can't just play normal. You have to play on the edge. So that's what I would do: a very aggressive pass defense, jumping routes, trying to get picks, punching at balls, ripping at balls, where maybe it ends up hurting you. But, I think otherwise, if you just try and match up with them, you don't have the personnel to keep BC in check.
For me, on the Toronto side, on the offensive plan, I think you want to play a little bit differently than you have been this year. I actually think you really want to slow things down. I think your defense is going to need rest. I think it's going to be very easy for them to get gassed in this game, and you just can't have your defense tired by the time you hit the third quarter against the BC Lions. And so my plan for the Toronto Argonauts is use every second of the play clock. And instead of going for big plays, especially with Coxie not being in there this week, which is what we're thinking at this point, use up your time. It's okay to extend the run game like they did a couple weeks ago, where they're throwing things out wide, getting the running backs involved in the passing game that way, chipping away with your 5 or 6 yard gains, your high completion percentage passes, your hooks to Kevin McTall, Dejan Brissett, Herzl. Like get those guys going on short passes. And if you can get BC to creep up, sure, take your shot from time to time. But you need to give the defense breaks. Your points are going to come. This offense has shown all season long. They're going to score. They're going to score points. They're going to score points in the first 3.5 quarters. They're going to get that part done. And so do it more slowly. It helps keep Rourke out of rhythm too. The longer you can get him sitting on the bench on the other sideline, the harder it is for teams like that to stay in rhythm. So you'll be helping the defense that way, and you'll be getting them more rest. I think in terms of X's and O's, I really want to stretch sideways, horizontally. I loved how they did that 2 weeks ago, where you had a combination of jet sweeps and outside runs, and I felt that opened up the middle nicely for the passing game. So that's something that you can do. I want to see crossers without Coxie there stretching down that sideline. Well, let's whoever is out there, whether it's Herslow or whoever we're putting out there, get them coming in into the middle. Get them coming in on digs. Get them coming in on drag routes across the field. See if you can get defenders to stay with them. See if you can get defenders to communicate back and forth on a defense that has struggled from time to time this season. So that's going to be my plan. Run the ball wide, passes over the middle on crossers, and take up your time. Chew up that play clock. Hit your hooks. And I think Toronto's going to be in a good position if they can do all that stuff. I'll jump right into my one thing, JB. My one thing is a rushing touchdown. It's been a while. Arbuckle cannot continue to lead this team in every rushing category. He still leads the team in rushing yards. He briefly lost it and then got it back again. And then he's tied with one touchdown rushing as the co-leader in rushing touchdowns. That's got to change. You got to get a running back touchdown. You got to get some running back production. I don't believe in running the football in the CFL, but not to the degree where you don't run at all. There has to be a little bit of balance. There's got to be something there. And so I know my game plan has them running wide. You have to do that too. You got to mix it up. We have some counters in there. Whatever you've got to run to be able to get production, it's got to result in a rushing touchdown. That is my one thing. JB, what is your one thing this week?
So many things. I guess my one thing I just connected to the plan. My one thing is to keep BC under 100 yards rushing. I feel like if they can achieve that, it gives them a chance to keep BC in check. It puts pressure on the defensive backs, but that's how you win the game. You can't. Somebody's got to step up and have a great game. So rather than expecting the whole team to do it, I'm going to dedicate to stopping the run and, really put it on the defensive backs to carry the day.
It's time for Put Me Down for 20. And we struggled last week, JB. We were 0 for 4 combined. You are now down to 215 and a half golden fleeces. So you're still up on the season. You're down to 195 and a half. So you're actually down now. I'm down to 216 and a half. So I'm still just up on the season. A reminder that just as we showed you last week, you should not take any of our bets very seriously. Only ever bet what you're happy to lose the cost of entertainment. JB, I'll lead off this week. I was struggling with this one. So for my non-Argos pick, I like the Ottawa Edmonton under 53 and a half at even money. That one jumped out to me. I could see that just being a slugfest of a game. And so that's my non-Argo bet. And for my Argo bet, I think just taking them on the money line to win. They're getting points at home. It's such a huge game. I think the value there is pretty good. The other thing is the books just don't have that many exciting bets this week. There weren't a lot of prop bets that showed up at all for me on any of the sites I looked at. So nothing jumped out to me. So I'm like, well, Toronto on the money line, taking the Argos at home. Historically with Coach Dinwiddie, that has been a winner. And so I like that bet and how it pays this week. Where are your bets coming from this week, JB?
Well, same deal. I don't know, whether the books have just turned the page to the NFL or there are just too many injuries, or they're at their wits' end with what to do with this league. But so mine were pretty vanilla in terms of what was available. I have the Argos winning from 1 to 13 points at plus 200 because they have to. So I believe that the team has it in them, and they have shown in quarters that they can play with anybody. So I feel relatively confident in this bet because I don't feel like this is David and Goliath, but it might be like Goliath, younger brother or something. And my other pick is the Bombers to win by 14 points or more. at plus 195. Montreal is down to, having fans in at quarterback. That is we've had injuries, but my God, Montreal is just been decimated by injuries. So I think Winnipeg is building, and even though it's in Montreal, they've had some bad luck there this year. The aura of Montreal at home has not been the case this year, and I can't lie. I would like to see Montreal taken to the woodshed a little bit. There's something about their coaching staff that rubs me the wrong way. So I've got the Bombers plus 14.
Let's get into Challenge Flag. JB, I am on a run. I have won 5 weeks straight in this, and if you're a new listener, Challenge Flag, the way it works is JB makes his picks every week, and then I choose one that I think will be wrong. That's the pick I throw my Challenge Flag on. And JB got off to a hot start, was up 4-2, and I am now up 7-4, having strung 5 straight weeks together. So pressure on you, JB. Let's go through the games. So we got Winnipeg at Montreal. Are you going to hedge, or are you sticking with your Bombers?
No, I have Winnipeg there. I think Winnipeg. Winnipeg straight up, I think is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. Edmonton at Ottawa. Where are you going there?
Well, I can tell you what I won't be doing, and that will be watching that game. God, I'm taking Edmonton. I will not take the Red Blacks. Edmonton is they have a little juice right now. I like Edmonton there.
I love Edmonton. Ottawa is one of my favorites of the year for you to pick, because I don't feel like you've ever gotten that one right for whatever reason.
I will not be perusing that game.
BC at Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto. I think I'm gonna go with them. I think I just don't believe this team is willing to cash in the season, and that's essentially what will happen if they lose.
And Saskatchewan at Calgary.
Oof, game of the week. Saskatchewan smacked me down. I thought, choosing Hamilton on the road was probably a bit rash, and Saskatchewan taught me a lesson. But I like Calgary. I like them in our last power poll. I like Calgary at home, but that's going to be a great game. So Calgary.
In terms of who you should be cheering for this week, so Winnipeg, Montreal winning is actually better for the Argos. Now, if Winnipeg wins, which I think both JB and I think they will, then that kind of turns. And from then on, you actually want Montreal to keep losing instead. But for this week, if you're looking from an Argos perspective, you actually want Montreal to beat Winnipeg. It's just an easier path for the Argos if that happens. You want Edmonton to beat Ottawa. You want Toronto, obviously, to beat BC. And I think you're cheering for Saskatchewan over Calgary in that last one, because I think you want the Riders to run away with it, just to increase the odds of that Week 19 game being a game that doesn't matter at all for the Rough Riders, which may make things easier for the Argos down the road. So that's your who to cheer for this week's segment. In terms of who to challenge, JB, I got to throw my challenge flag on the last one. I think I got to throw it on Saskatchewan, Calgary. You have picked the Stampeders at home. I think the Rough Riders are playing very good football right now. I like Calgary too. I think that's the easiest one for me to challenge. So I will throw my challenge flag on your Stampeders pick. I've got the Rough Riders. It's almost here, JB. We are 48 hours away, a little bit more than that, from kickoff. The CNE game, Saturday, 3 p.m. start. Make sure you get down there to enjoy all of the festivities at the CNE. Make sure you drop by Something in the Water Brewing for a pregame beer. Check out the Argos, enjoy it, watch Blue Rodeo. It is going to be a party from dawn until dusk at the CNE grounds, so make sure you get down there to enjoy it all. That will just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough episode of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see you.